In this episode,
Sure, you watch it and you're like, oh, that's a Chris Spector just dressed up, or
Yep.
you see the guns and everybody knows it, or it's just hair furniture on a AR-15 or whatever, for whatever movie you're watching.
Or lack of furniture on an AR-15.
Yes. What is it? What was the movie where it was John Carpenter and Escape from New York, and he just takes the handguards off. And it's funny. It actually it's like what a low budget way to solve a problem, right? Let's make it look like futuristic guns. We'll just take the handguards off so it looks more futuristic.
In an obtuse world, Mark and Jefe will combine military, law enforcement, and general FUD knowledge to keep you vertical. Welcome to the Live, Laugh, Larp podcast.
Hey everybody, what's going on? Thanks for joining us on another edition of the Live, Laugh, Larp podcast. I certainly do appreciate each and every single one of you out there listening to this podcast. We've been on a bit of a hiatus. I'm going to touch on that here in just a second, but I do want to say I'm here by myself in the studio on the casting couch, as Jefe would say it, because Jefe's out there doing some cool stuff, and I'm kind of jealous, but work has him away for a bit, so I'm not sure exactly when we'll have him back. Might be a couple episodes before we have him back, but hopefully he will be back soon, safely, and appreciate everything that you've done for the podcast, Jefe. Thanks so much, and we will, hopefully see you soon. Additionally, we need to say a huge thank you to the title sponsor of the podcast, that is XS Sights. You guys, you should know. They are the premier sighting solution for your Glocks, for your, VP9s, for your MP5s, for your AR-15, AK-47. Heck, I think they even got some really cool stuff for things you haven't even thought of. You can capitalize on a 20% discount for using the code LARP. That's LARP. That is XS Sight's way of saying thank you for listening to the Live, Laugh, LARP podcast. I am getting ready to purchase some more of their sights for one of my AKs. I want to try one of their AK sights out to see how well those are going to be working. If you've been paying attention to the YouTube channel, you may know that I just refurbished, reset, brought back from the dead, whatever you want to say, a Wasser 10. And I think that one of their AK front sight posts would pair perfectly for that. So give them a look out, check them out, see if they would have anything that you might want to use, and use our code. We don't get any kickbacks from it. I get nothing from it, but you guys get to save. It's 20% off anything. So thank you so much to the team over there at XS Sights. With that being said, we have a guest that is going to join us here in just a second. I have known this character for a number of years. We'll get into it here in the podcast, but I'm excited because he's got something that is pretty cool, kind of near and dear to my heart. I think it's really cool that they pulled this together. We'll talk about it in the podcast as well. But Sven, how's it going?
Going good.
Great for you to take time out of your busy schedule. I know you're busy. You're going to come here and join us for a little bit and chat about Manticore Arms. I think it's just really interesting, all of the different things that you've been pulling together over the years. But before we get into that, just kind of tell us who you are and what you do.
Sure. So as you mentioned, I'm Sven at Manticore Arms. I'm the owner, the president, the lead designer, whatever you want to call me, for the company. We've been around for 16 years, started in the bullpup arena, you'd say, for aftermarket accessories, and kind of have grown and shifted and evolved and followed the winds of trade, I guess, as you would say, over the last decade and a half. And here we are in 2026 with new ideas, new products, and everything. My background is actually in architecture. I went to school for that. I did that for a good solid 10 to 15 years, and then slowly made the transition into starting my own business and moving away from a highly regulated industry to a less regulated industry, I guess.
I don't know. It seems kind of counterintuitive when you go into the firearms industry. You would think that it would be even more regulated.
It's a different type of regulation. I did enough reviews with code officials and things. I'd kind of had my time with that, and then said, "Hey, let's just go with the ATF, right? Like that can't be any worse." So
that is true. Well, one of the biggest things that I'm glad that I've got you on the channel, because with my YouTube channel, you were actually one of the first companies. I wouldn't say the first, but one of the first companies that was open to sending me stuff to review, which, as a small YouTube channel just trying to get started, that's pretty instrumental in trying to get some momentum on your channel and not have to share or carry the burden of purchasing everything, especially if someone's just getting into firearms. So first and foremost, I want to say a huge thank you for that. I've not forgotten about that, and it was cool that we bumped into each other at SHOT Show this year, because we had an opportunity to reconnect, and then obviously get you onto the podcast as well. So I'm just really ecstatic that you're here.
Yeah, and I gotta say, it was funny because I think I'd been in the SHOT Show main hall maybe 10 or 15 minutes, and I think it was at the PSA booth we bumped into each other.
Yep.
And it was one of those, you look and your brain is like, I know this person who I haven't seen him in a while though, and there's literally 40,000 other people there. But as far as like, the giving you stuff when you were starting, I mean, we were tiny back then too, and it's kind of a reciprocal thing where a lot of times the tiny guy, you got ideas, but you don't have the connections or know the people. And, a lot of us, I mean, you two obviously have, grown up and matured as what you've, developed and whatnot over the years. And everybody started there somewhere. So I always figured if somebody wants to look at our stuff and review it, hey, why not? Like you never know who the next big guy is going to be, or somebody who's going to give you a perspective that you hadn't thought of. I always said, I'll give you, somebody wants a part to review, just give me an honest review. If you like it, great. But, if you've got some genuine feedback, hey, this could be better or whatever, or I wonder if they've thought about this. I always view that as an opportunity to grow and learn, because, I'm a human being like everybody else, and I may have crazy ideas, but sometimes, a different perspective helps. So
absolutely. And that's something that I also appreciate in the fact that, there is a lot of YouTubers out there that will receive product from a company and then automatically think that automatically means that a good review has to come from that video, and I've ran into it before, where I've ran into some problems, and I'm like, hey, I'll call the company and let them know, hey, these are the problems I ran into, but that's not stopping the video. The video's still going to come out. And some companies have had a problem with that. And I'm like, that's not going to make you better. That's just going to, kind of mask a problem that other people are going to have. And I don't feel comfortable trying to influence someone into purchasing something that I wouldn't use myself, so having that freedom is a very welcome breath of fresh air.
Yeah. And I agree. And I think the other thing, I don't know about you, but if you see a review that's nothing but glowing, somebody's doing reviews and they're nothing but glowing reviews all the time, you start to question. I mean, I'm not saying that somebody might not get lucky and everything they get is awesome, a great part, or maybe they're just really good at spotting that in the industry. But I'd say, you're seeing, I'd say the modern consumer is pretty savvy on, is somebody a pay to play or is it something else? And I think that actually adds to the reliability and the trustworthiness of somebody if they have the freedom to say, hey, I didn't care for this personally, or, and you make the point of you get something to review, and something goes wrong with it. And maybe it's just, you got the one part that, a threaded hole was stripped out or something. It happens, right? That's just manufacturing and production. And it's to give the chance for the company to make it right. But if you have a legitimate gripe with what something is, you should be allowed to say that. I mean, that's my belief. And I'm not every company out there. And I understand, why some companies may take the other viewpoint. But to me, I'd rather be honest about it, or open, and just let the person do their job, which is to be the eyes and ears and the hands, right? The hands on that the guy who's interested in it can't be. One of the things I said when I was working on our website is I try to have a ton of photos of every product from every angle. And I always give too much description. That's one of the complaints actually my people say is, Sven, you're writing too much stuff, right? It's like a small book on the details. But for me, I know when I'm looking at a product online, if you can't handle it, the next best thing is a lot of pictures so you can at least understand it, and a description of it does this, it has these features, it's, coated in this finish or whatever, so that at least you've got a baseline of what it is. So
absolutely. But some of the things that we wanted to talk about, some of the things that we wanted to discuss, is you've got a new product that has just dropped. I think your first batch sold out, if I remember correctly. But talk to us about, and this is something near and dear to my heart, because you're getting ready to touch into one of my all-time favorite movies. Talk to us about the Ripley Rail.
Sure. So I have a love of science fiction, all the properties, video games, things like that. And all of them have distinctive firearms in them. The good ones, I should say. I'm sure you watch it and you're like, oh, that's a Chris Spector just dressed up. Or, you see the guns and everybody knows it, or it's just hair furniture on a AR-15 or whatever, for whatever movie you're watching.
Or lack of furniture on an AR-15.
Yes. What is it? What was the movie where it was John Carpenter and Escape from New York, and he just takes the handguards off? And it's funny, it actually it's like, what a low budget way to solve a problem, right? Let's make them look like futuristic guns. So we'll just take the handguards off so it looks more futuristic. John Carpenter is amazing. We go down a rabbit hole on him. But so the Ripley Rail was, I'll talk about the product, but I want to talk about the philosophy behind the product too. So the Ripley Rail is essentially, for those, since nobody can see what we're talking about here, it's an extended carry handle on the top of an AR-15, and then a rather large forend with a plastic U-shaped foregrip on it, which some people refer to as the pump. A lot of people said it looks like the pulse rifle out of Aliens. That's probably 90% of people say that. We've had a few people say it looked like, things from other sci-fi properties. Certainly that was an influence, but my goal was to capture that sci-fi feel. So anything you like, if you like Starship Troopers or Halo or Hellfighters or any of that, to get something that turns your AR-15 into a different gun. It's the same gun, but how can we aesthetically dress it up or cosplay it or LARP it, whatever you want to say, but that you've got a real science fiction firearm that you can go to the range and actually shoot. And I think so far it's been successful. I took a risk on this one. This was one of those, man, this is a really crazy out there idea. And they're not cheap to make. A ton of labor goes into it and steps and everything. So as far as usually when I'm developing products, we try to be very smart about how much man hours go into it, how parts come together, all the processes. But on this one, I said, you know what, I'm not making any compromises. We're going to make it exactly what I want. And if everybody else wants it, great. If not, I've got one at least, right? Or several hundred of them, as the case may be. But so that's what the product is. It, like I said, people say it kind of looks like a Aliens pulse rifle now on a 10.5-inch AR. So, and so the theory behind the product, to get into it a little deeper, for the last 16 years, I guess it's been now, keep saying 15, but for the last 15 years, I started with making parts for the Steyr AUG, which was a handle that was more ergonomic for charging the gun, a brass deflector so you could shoot left-handed because the conversion kits were hard to get to make them, or you just want to convert the gun over, you have your buddy shoot who's left-handed. And so I've really focused on ergonomic upgrades for guns. We joke it's the hot rod culture here in the US with firearms where everybody wants to customize their gun. But I think that's perfectly legitimate. I'm not as tall as you, another person may have longer arms, whatever. And so dialing in a gun to your use, your need is great. The problem we've started running into in the last few years that I've started to see in the industry is everything is just a slightly different version of everything else. So, the AR-15 is the AR-15. 1911s, okay, they've turned them into double stacks. I mean, there was a period back there a decade ago, every print gun magazine, that'll date it, right?
Yeah.
Had either an AR-15 or 1911 on the cover. Ooh, it's the new hot thing. No, it's the same system, just redressed with different barrel length, different finish, whatever. And I think we started to see that in handguns. Really what's, you can get the Glock striker fired. Everybody's got their striker fired high cap gun, a smaller version for carry. I think what's happened is after 125, probably pushing 140 years now of development of the brass cartridge, we've found the 99.99th percentile of ergonomics and efficiency. And at this point, all we're doing is splitting pieces of hair from hairs to tweak it a little bit left or right for somebody's individual taste, or each brand wants to have it look a little different. But functionally, we're really hitting a wall of what can you do to make things more functional. And I think with the AR, it's a really good example. There's probably 100 companies making different safety leveler kits for it, and they all are tiny bit different, but at the end of the day, they're all kits. I mean, we do it too, and because there's a market there. But what I was looking at is these are all functional enhancements of the gun to make it so, you're in the dynamic range, you're clearing your house, you're a mercenary out in some foreign country doing whatever, and the gun gives you the absolute performance. I think some of what we've lost here is the fun of shooting guns. And what I wanted to do was make a product that ties into that emotional love of something and lets you experience it, or at least experience it as close as we can with modern day technology. So, we're not shooting laser beams, we're not shooting the plasma bolts or whatever, but to get that feel. But what I also wanted to do was make it an actual functional product. One thing about the Ripley Rail is people look at it and they go, oh, it's a dress up kit or whatever. But they usually say, well, how am I supposed to aim it? Because from the side view, it's not obvious. It's actually, the carry handle actually has a channel, and we've got adjustable front and rear AR-15 sights built into it.
Yep.
In fact, I put a lot of time into, we use an A2 front sight post for a specific reason. We've got an A2 rear peep, but it's an A1 style assembly on the rear with a Rapid X windage knob. So this is my personal ideal layout, which is all you need is a bullet point to adjust the sights. You've got a small peep and a large peep. It actually is a really, really functional setup for sights. You've got, a 9.5-inch sight radius. So it's not as precise as, say, your standard M4 carbine or M16, sight radius, but it's certainly serviceable. And we have video of people taking the rail right out of the box, bolting it on their gun and shooting plates at 25 yards because we actually we mechanically zero every single one before we ship it out. So that somebody can drop it on. It might need a little adjustment for your particular ammunition or whatever, but it's functional. The point is you get the look, but we've made sure to package in actual use with it. It's also designed so you take your existing forend off whatever gun you got. Let's say it's we recommend 10.5-inch gets the best look, but you could definitely put it on a longer barreled AR, and you just slide it in and it bolts to the top Picatinny. And it's actually, if if you're familiar with like the Arms Sur rails from 2000, 2003, my gosh, they might be even the late 90s. So it clamped to the top area, and then it had a fore end that hung from that. I hadn't even thought about it at the time when I designed it, but that's literally what we're doing. The carry handle clamps to the upper like a normal carry handle, but it extends farther forward of where the barrel nut is. And the fore end actually hangs from that. It's actually cantilevered from it structurally. And so the fore end actually free floats the entire barrel. Like it's not touching it anywhere, not even at the barrel nut. You can use any standard or random barrel nut, whatever handguard you're using. You can just use the barrel nut that's on there. So you're literally just debolting your handguard. You can slide this thing on. And that was kind of a happy accident that it was like, oh, this is like the most easy rail system to install out there. You got good ventilation. The front is covered with M-lock slots, which was just to get the look of a ventilated heat shield, from a sci-fi gun, but it ends up being functional. And then we have our M-lock pump grip, our foregrip, we call it. And you can move that around. You can remove it. And it was not intentional, but everything kind of came together to make a product that actually works quite well for, 100 meter and in high volume fire AR, and almost like a gun from a sci-fi movie, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so you said that it doesn't interface with the barrel nut at all.
No.
So it just slides right on over. Mm-hmm. Is it compatible with like a D-ring style nut, that someone might have for like a A2 style M4 or something like that, or
like the Delta ring? Yeah. So it'll work with a standard AR barrel nut. Now you have to remove the Delta ring on it and the spring and the E-clip on the back.
Right.
It's not big enough to fit around that. If we did that, it'd be so monstrously huge. But it was more of a happy accident too. And I'm just going to be honest about that. I did not. Design is an interesting thing where you start. Mm-hmm. I was actually designing for aesthetics, and things just kind of fell into place, which actually is my favorite way when it's like you discover, like just kind of, I don't know if it was just experience kind of made it happen or what, but yeah, it'll drop on a standard AR barrel nut as long as you've removed the Delta ring. So it's probably one of the easiest systems to install out there. Routinely, I'm putting them on guns, taking them off for various stuff here when we're doing photography and film. And I appreciate the system I came up with. Mm-hmm. Not to pat my own back, but
well, I think it's a lot of fun, like you said, that was kind of what you were aiming for, is just to have something that was going to be a fun time. Yep. Additionally, on the quote unquote carry handle, you also have some channels to allow you to mount optics as well. Explain how that plays out a little bit.
Yeah. So a standard AR-15 carry handle profile is what we actually based the carry handle off of. So if you imagine the AR-15, it kind of slopes down at the front, but imagine if on a standard A1 upper receiver, that channel, instead of sloping down, just continued for about 12 inches forward on the gun and then came down. That's really all I did. And I say that like it's simple. It actually, it works well structurally. I guess that's a little bit of the structural engineering stuff I know coming into it. It gives a good support, so there's no wiggle on the fore end. But it gives a good sight channel. So actually, you don't even need the sights. You can just look down the channel and aim relatively well at very close range. Your elevation gets a little off, hip firing it, but you can do it. But I was looking, I said, well, you can mount an optic with an standard AR-15 carry handle. We've already got the same profile. Let's just put the same mounting hole in it. So you can just take your bolt-on optic, if it's an ACOG or some of the primary arms ones. To be honest, I haven't tried one of the Colt scopes because they've got a little bit of a different mechanism, but essentially anything that uses a bolt that comes up through the bottom to mount on the carry handle drops right in. And so it gets a little silly, I guess you'd say. You've got an A3 upper that you've now put iron sights on, that you've now put an optic on, but it's no different than really a carry handle AR. And I like the idea that it gives you the flexibility. As I approach a certain age, the ability to use optics is nice for certain shooting as opposed to irons. So front sight's getting just a tiny fuzzy for me finally
Yes.
as the years go on. So
Absolutely. Yeah. That is, I know that a good friend of mine, Clayco 47, he has been encouraging, I guess is the right way to say it, to get me to start shooting irons in a lot of the different competitions that we compete together in. And I just finally had to tell him, I was like, look, man, I don't know if my eyes can do it anymore, you know?
yeah,
So,
I come from, I shot irons. I never used red dots or scopes till way into my, when I got into shooting many years afterwards. But I'm getting to the point. I was shooting a pistol class last May, I think it was. Yeah, May 2025. Was shooting a pistol class with my Glock. I was like, oh, the sights are starting to get a bit fuzzy. Okay, whatever, no big deal. And then by the end of the year, it was like, I'm going to have to learn how to do red dots on pistols now. And I've always been resistant to that because I felt it. Pistols meant to be small and compact. But I have a friend who's trains police departments for that. He's a police officer. And once he showed me, I was like, okay, I'm now being a stubborn middle-aged man, not wanting to do it. So
yeah. Well, it's funny because John Correa from ASP, he made comment last year at SHOT Show in some of his reels or shorts that he was doing that he's like, I refuse to be sight Amish, and I was like, that's actually hilarious. You're saying the guys who will refuse to use red dot, calling them Amish is freaking hilarious.
Right. I will say the counterpoint to this is it actually goes back to when I was in school, my bachelor's in architecture. Back in the day, they were not teaching us CAD. They were not computer assisted drafting. So we weren't learning AutoCAD or any of those programs. They were teaching us to hand draft. And a lot of us gave some pushback on that because we were concerned, hey, it's going to be hard to find a job if I don't know how to use CAD. And they said, well, there's a lot of programs and, you never know where you're going to end up. And a lot of them have custom software and everything. They are going to teach that to you. But if you can draw by hand well, you understand all the fundamentals of what the computer program does for you. And you may be out in the field and not have a computer handy. This is before iPads and all that. And so you may have to do a hand sketch real quick. And if you don't have a computer and all you know is computers, that's not going to help you. I like to think of it as if it's the end of the world or you're running from the serial killer in the movie, do you want to be the one person who doesn't know how to drive stick shift? And the stick shift car is all you have available. I like to view iron sights like that. I think it's an excellent fundamental to teach you, the basics of sighting and everything, and you can always fall back on it. But I do agree. I think optic sights, that's really the revolution we've seen after the brass cartridge case is now optics and electronics. It's crazy to see where, ACOGs were $1,000 optics back in the day. They're probably more now. And now you're seeing all these brands that bring in optics and it's like, $200 and you can get a really good red dot or a really good prism sight or whatever on your gun, which is just unthinkable. 30 years ago?
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
Yeah. I can still remember pulling together my first AR build and I ordered a red dot off of Amazon because I didn't know any better. And the red dot that I got was great. It looked cool. It looked like it was straight out of freaking Modern Warfare 2. And I took it outside and then you can't even see it. Oof. The red dot is just so dim. That LED emitter was so underpowered that in bright sunlight you couldn't see the red dot. And to go from that to today where we have companies like obviously Hollow Sun, and other companies like Siley who are admittedly Chinese companies with US branding, I guess is the best way to say it.
Yeah.
To really challenge price points within the industry, I think is it's a good thing. I'm not saying that they're better than Aimpoint or Trigicon, but they're competitive. Just like, I wouldn't take a Corvette straight off of a dealer's lot onto a Indy 500 racetrack. I could still be competitive, but I wouldn't be wouldn't be as fast, So anyway, but I also agree with you that utilizing and understanding the fundamentals of iron sights is extremely important as well. You bring up drafting and AutoCAD and stuff like that. I took 2 years of drafting in high school, and same thing. It was, we're not doing anything on computers. You're going to learn how to draw everything by hand, to include the title box of what that drawing was. And we had to use a straight edge to write out all the block lettering, which was actually really good because it fixed my horrible handwriting.
It's funny because mine too, but I've done hand, written drafting, lettering for so long. I can't write lowercase anymore. I could do it, but it looks like an 8-year-old's doing it.
Yeah.
All my uppercase, if I'm going fast, it starts to slant over a bit, in the verticals, but that's how I write. And it's funny how you think that affects you. I look at my brother, how he writes, and his writing is a little rougher than mine, just because I was forced to do it to try and get, good grades on my drafting homework in school. So.
Well, it's funny to me because we had a real stickler when it came to my instructor in high school. He pored over every single drawing from every single student, and he would come up and find the smallest little issue, like a line is overdrawn just like by a 1/16 of an inch.
But it doesn't represent what's there, and it's not good quality. Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And if you didn't use a straight edge on your writing, he would know. And I'm like, how? It's only a 1/4 inch tall. How can you tell whether or not I used a straight edge or not? So it was it just blew me away to see how particular he was on those types of things, and the concept of doing things right the first time and double checking your work and those types of things has been a long lasting theme through my entire life, to the point where my boss now in the job that I have is like, hey, look, you're being a little too accurate here.
I was having this discussion at one point with an employee, and I said, look, in school you can get a C, but in the real world it's right or it's wrong. There's not really, there are exceptions to that rule, but generally speaking, it's just got to be right, and it's got to be good quality. That's what you're getting compensated for. So, but yeah, same thing. I thought my drafting was pretty good, and then went to college. And one of my guys who ended up being a roommate, he had actually been in the Marine Corps and doing drafting and drawings and whatnot before he had gone to school, get his bachelor's in architecture. And man, you could tell that it was like the Catholic nun with the ruler, probably, when they were trained to draft, because his drawings were just obscenely accurate, and his handwriting was just like a machine was doing it. Never seen anything like it. So.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's really cool. So one of the other things that we wanted to kind of dive into a little bit is, especially from your perspective, where are we sitting as far as the state of the industry? Obviously, as a manufacturer, we heard it, 8 years ago with the Trump slump. Is that still kind of a theme that we're seeing now with the current administration? Is from your perspective, are things down, or things, how do you see things?
Right. I think we can all agree that somehow the timeline split off at COVID, right? Like there was a moment where now it feels like we're in some fictional world and we took the exit on the highway.
I think the timeline branched at the death of Harambe. I think
there you go. Wow. Yeah, I think from my perspective, and I won't talk numbers or anything, we're definitely down from where we were at the peak there. I think, people say the Trump slump. Yes, but I think I can isolate, at least from what I'm seeing, some of the factors. So the whole industry's down. It started about 3 years ago, I would say. We haven't discussed this too much, but we were actually in Illinois. They changed the laws. We relocated the business to South Carolina. And it was right about then that everything in the industry hit. So we definitely saw it firsthand with the big change it was, and how we had to scale our operations accordingly as time went on. But I would say the industry's down. It's down again this year over last year, which is down over the previous year. And at first I was thinking when we moved, and that's why I bring up the move. When we moved, maybe it was something we had done wrong, a bad decision, or just the relocation hurt us in a way I couldn't see. We weren't being able to put as much time into marketing or things like that. And you go, oh boy, did I make the right call here? Escaping, Illinois with its new and horrible rules. But it became more apparent the more, excuse me, the more I've talked to people in the industry over the last few years. It's industry wide, and there's a lot of factors. I think a lot of them are still COVID related to events that were caused by COVID. And I think there's a lot of current events that are affecting it. I can just say right now, the price of aluminum is going through the roof again, but even more so. We've seen it just in the last few weeks. Fuel surcharges are now a thing we're starting to see. That's all directly related to what's going on, in Iran and the Strait of Hormuz and international shipping and whatnot. I think we can say tariffs have definitely affected things, but probably not in the way people think, because everything we do is USA designed, USA manufactured. 100% of our work is here in the USA, the stuff we do. So it would seem like we are isolated from that. Mm-hmm. But the tariffs, what they really do is they raise the price on everything else for a potential customer of ours. And now he's got less money in his pocket. And he goes, well, do I pay for the kids' new braces, or do I buy some cool accessories for my gun? And, that's a pretty obvious question when you've got X amount of money to spend on solving these two things.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of what we're seeing. I think the more time has gone on, I think what we thought was growth in the industry was an artificial peak caused by COVID checks. I think a lot of people were stuck at home with nothing to do. They were bored. They still had a job, were making good money, and were buying things online because it was the only way to entertain yourself. I know in Illinois, we basically were it doesn't even feel real now to talk about this. The state was basically shut down. Like you couldn't go places. You could go to the grocery store, you could go to the bank, but businesses were actually closed. And we were exempt from that because we had an FFL, and that was considered critical business because, we serviced some police departments around there. And that was because of the, Second Amendment rights and everything. It was viewed that you needed to keep those open. But, there was that. And then people get, businesses are struggling. Okay, we'll give people a check to get the economy rolling again. And okay, well, I'm covering my normal bills. Everything's fine. And then you spend on that, on fun gun parts. So we were seeing a lot of, a good sales. We actually were growing in 2020, 2021. And it wasn't until that all started to peter out and the downstream effects of just printing money and injecting it into the economy start to hit with, inflation. And now your dollar doesn't go as far. Probably could start my own economic doom and gloom podcast here, right? So, but all those factors, I don't think it's one factor. I don't think it's Trump being elected was what happened. I think it was things before him. I think it's things during his administration. I'm pretty neutral on the politics thing. The running joke, at least we hear internally in the industry, is you hope a Republican gets elected, right, for gun rights, but you pray a Democrat gets elected because of the panic buying.
Yeah.
You never win either way. It's either the market slows down because people aren't worried, or the market's a panic buy market. And it's strange because I started the business in 2010, and I think it had just started then with this weird spike drop thing we now see. It wasn't like that in the years before. I remember going to the gun shops when I was before I had the business, and ask them how things were going. We knew the local mom and pop shop, and they'd always tell us, and no, things are good. It was just everything was gonna. There was a much more even pace to it as this uncertainty and spikes and valleys seem to happen now. Mm-hmm. So
yeah,
that's my take.
Yeah. And I think that's a fairly balanced take as well, especially, coming from the industry that I work on as a normal, like my everyday job. We ended up seeing one of our most profitable years in 2023. And then 24 was not as good, and people were already starting to panic a little bit. And then 25 was even down from there, and people are like, oh my goodness. I'm like, but we still turned a profit. So, what's, it just cracked me up, because people are panicking, worrying about whether or not they're going to have a job. And sure, yeah, I'm sure that they had reasons to feel that, but I'm at the same time, I'm like, we're not bankrupt. We're not losing money. We're still making money. It's just not as much. So, but one of the interesting things is I'm very well connected with one of my local shops here, and I spend a lot of time there and hang out there and just, sit behind the counter. I get mistaken for an employee all the time, and I help out when I can, but there's some things I just, I'm not qualified to talk about. But one of the things that took me off guard was the boss man. He was like, man, you hear all this talk about the industry being down, and I'm not seeing it. And I'm like, what do you mean? He usually processes his paperwork on all of his firearm sales about once every 3 days, let me back up. It was once a week. He would process all of the paperwork and look through inventory and see what he needs to restock on, and so on and so forth. That was, I would say probably late last year. And then at the beginning of this year, he's like, I don't understand what has changed, but all of a sudden I'm now going through and processing all of the things that I normally do about once every other day to once every 3 days. Mm-hmm. So he's like, there are some products that I can't keep on the shelves. As soon as they come in, they're gone. And we did see that, I think holistically, with the reduction of the tax stamp to 0. So obviously suppressors are a big deal right now. And that was one thing that they saw a huge influx in sales on, which is good because they just started selling suppressors. So that's a great way to dive right on in and ride that wave.
Yeah, I think being the end reseller is probably the best place to be in that. It's funny you bring that up, and somebody asked me if we were going to go into suppressors. Last year we were, and I did look at it. We've done some development work and whatnot. But my biggest concern was, how big is the suppressor market realistically? Mm-hmm. Now, certainly the $200 tax, knowing 6 months in advance, all the big players and a lot of small players were able to generate, inventory. But me and a friend who was an FFL, we had a bet on, when will the market be flooded? And I was saying, by August, of 2026, we'll see things tapering down. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not selling suppressors, so maybe I don't have the feel for it. But certainly within a month, there was nothing really out of stock. Like, you could nothing was completely wiped out and impossible to find. So it looks like at least the initial bump has been absorbed by the market pretty well.
I think so.
Manufacturing. But I'm very curious to see where that goes. You know, I don't know. I decided to not go into that area because I felt that it's like everybody being told that Palantir stock is going to go up to 200 in 3 weeks, and everybody jumps in, and then then the bubble pops, right? You know, or the AI bubble pops, whatever you're investing in. I'm not convinced that there's going to be a ton of long-term strength in the suppressor market, or at least as much as people are anticipating. Maybe the big players will do well, and I'm sure there'll be some innovative players. I'm talking about this like it's past tense. It's happening right now. I'm sure there's some innovative stuff that will happen because it opens doors not having that tax. I mean, it's basically like saying, hey, guess what? Our product costs $200 less thanks to the government. It makes it a lot easier, and the e-forms totally change that segment of the industry. You know, the ability to, I've seen people in 4 hours get a form back approved, which is, you know, what was it, 10 years ago? It could be 15 months.
Yeah.
Like the fact that even happened is just so mind boggling. It's impossible to explain to somebody that every suppressor back in the day was a cherished, coveted item in your collection, and you bought one that did everything. And now you can have one on every gun specific to that caliber and whatever function you want. It's just so radically different. That's one of the things we talk about a lot too with other people we know in the industry, is how radically different this industry has become in the last 5 or 6 years. And
Correct.
COVID notwithstanding, it's I have learned a little bit the hard way too. We've had to get back into marketing. With Ripley Rail is really where I've been putting the push for strong marketing again on our social media channels, everything like that. But I think a modern gun company to be successful has to be a marketing company that happens to make gun parts.
Yeah.
That's my take on it. Is when I started, and you know, to circle back to where you said, hey, it was really cool, you were willing to send me a part. Well, that was my marketing budget, right? I'd send you a part, and whether you gave me a good review or a bad review or whatever, in my view, it got our name out there. You had an audience and would talk to people about it, and people would find your videos and whatnot. I did guerrilla marketing. I was on, you know, websites and gun websites and stuff, which are all also a dinosaur at this point. You know, it's kind of an antiquated method of communicating what your product is and what you do. But yeah, it's so different. That's one of the reasons I decided, like with the Ripley Rail, well, we got to try something new. We got to pivot and experiment to find a way to be relevant in the current market. Because if we just keep doing the same thing, eventually we'll become a dinosaur and age out of the market. And I don't want that. I want to make gun parts till I'm walking around with a walker.
Yeah, for sure.
and whatnot.
I think, you know, tempering the tsunami of the suppressor market right now is in my opinion, kind of a smart move. Yeah, if you would have jumped in, you know, late last year or early this year, you might make a bit of money on it.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that I noticed from SHOT Show, and I've said to several different people, including different live chats that I've been on, is that we saw 50 new suppressor companies at SHOT Show this year, and next year at SHOT Show we're going to see 50 less suppressor companies.
The little guys, they're the ones that are going to fold quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I've designed suppressors. I've got production suppressors out there, actually, a couple of models that have been manufactured and people own them. You know, they're specific to the 9mm Tavor and the Scorpion Evo. We've got some internal work that we're doing on some more esoteric stuff, and even looking at some things that might relate back to the Ripley Rail in the future. We'll see. But Suppressors, they're easy and they're hard at the same time, because they're easy because anybody with a lathe can spin a piece of tubing and can spin up some K-baffles, throw it together, make it out of aluminum if you want to be really cheap. We've seen it. I've owned some suppressors from a company that did just that. They're great suppressors. They've got, a certain amount of use. You can't shoot them on full auto. You can't do certain things, but there's a learning curve there that every company that is successful had to go through. And my concern was, what I see is, like you said, there'll be 50 less, maybe 52 less, right? Who knows, or 49 less. But most of these small guys will disappear in a year or two because nobody knows who they are. Most of them are going to sell on price point, right? They're going to make the cheapest suppressor they can. As soon as that breaks, you're going to reach out, and Joe Bob suppressors, oh, guess what? They're gone. You don't have any service for that suppressor as it wears out. They may not even be aware that their suppressors are going to wear out, or have certain issues, which, I've been lucky enough to see a few of those things to know what to look for. But I thought trying to compete with, as the number you said, 50 new small guys to be recognized and to walk up that learning curve in 6 months, to have suppressors the day their people are expecting them. To me, that looked like buying a lottery ticket and hoping it pays off. And I would rather see what works, see what doesn't work, kind of see the trends the market takes, because I think what the long-term effect is, it's going to benefit people. It's going to benefit because there's going to be a lot of brains working in that market space that are thinking of new ideas. That's one thing I'm excited to see. And that's one thing I'm excited to work on too, that some of the ideas I've got is the thing I'd like to bring to the suppressor market. If we do it, is something different. Let's accomplish it in a completely different way, or let's do something that nobody's thought of, or even with the $200 tax gone, now it's not a problem. And the lead time's gone. If we want to make a dedicated suppressor for a gun, a specific model, something other than an AR-15, you can do it, and there's a market for that, and you're in a price point and availability that people might actually be willing to take a risk on that, as opposed to just doing a general cylindrical can that threads on to the front of whatever, half 28 or 5/8 24 barrel you have. So.
Yeah. And I will say, not to be all doom and gloom about it, though, I will say that, just as mentioned, I'm in my local shop all the time. And one of the guys that works there is always asking me, so what's the scuttlebutt on suppressors? Who's the next big thing, And there have been a couple of different companies that have kind of hit my radar. That's like, I have never heard of these people before. And now all of a sudden, everybody cannot stop talking about how great their suppressors are. And I think that's a great thing. You have companies like Ridgeback Defense, they've got their...
It's funny you mentioned them. My police officer friend who does the Red Dot training, he bought one of their suppressors, or I think it was either he had bought it or a customer of his had bought it, because he's got an FFL, he does transfers. And they went out to the range so the guy could test it, because he never shot a suppressor. And my friend thought there was something, like, he was like, what? Where's the sound? Like, he was confused. And it was just unbelievably good performance. And we've run it head to head with several other suppressors. And it's not like they're priced any more than anything else out there, comparable. And it's like, okay, there's still some magic and some secret sauce to be found here, So,
yeah. And we've seen a massive uptick in like titanium 3D printed cans. And I think that may, depending on how the rest of this year goes, maybe into next year. But I think that a lot of people really got hyped up for a lightweight, 3D printed titanium can. And I have a couple of different examples. They're pretty cool. They're interesting. They're neat. But I think a lot of people are going to move away from titanium and start getting back into like Inconel and some of these other stainless steel components, because of now FRTs are just everywhere, and someone who has an FRT that wants to suppress their rifle, they're going to be like, oh, well, I don't want to put a titanium cannon. It's just going to, it's going to degrade it too fast, so we may see a transition within the industry again, just in this year. So it's going to be pretty interesting to see how this all plays out, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting to me from a technology. So my biggest fear is somebody who makes products. I like to view myself as or my company. Sometimes I use those interchangeably, myself and my company. My wife says the company is me. So, and that sometimes I have a problem with the boundary because I'll keep talking about company stuff, even it's like 8 p.m. She's like, it's okay. We can talk about something else. Yeah, but it's my outlet for, my creative outlet. But kind of right now, the one thing that separates my company from a guy sitting in his house is I've worked really hard to build a manufacturing base, right? We can machine parts, we can make extrusion, we can mold stuff, all these processes. We may outsource some of it, we do some of it in-house. But 3D printing, we even at one point way early in 3D printing technology of metal, we had a customer who wanted a custom handguard design and they needed it fast for SHOT Show one year. And we were able to find a company that would 3D print it out of aluminum. And the fidelity was, it was okay. I did some hand finishing, but it allowed us to get a component done for them in like 3 weeks. But it's not cost effective. It wasn't then, it isn't now for aluminum parts. Mm-hmm. But you start getting to titanium, Inconel, these wonder substances that are very hard to machine. The base material is expensive. You think about machining just a simple baffle out of titanium or whatever. Probably more than 60% of it ends up as chips on the floor, right? So you've paid for that metal and it's on the ground. Whereas when you 3D print it, there's literally no waste. Like mm-hmm. every ounce of titanium you've paid for is going into that suppressor and getting used, and you can do shapes that can't be done with traditional machining. I find it very interesting that the suppressor market is the one where we found this nexus point of material technology and price point. Suppressors were pricey enough that they could afford to move into 3D printing technology without any noticeable change in ultimate price. And the industry accepted it because of that, right? Because your $600 can, it costs you whatever the same amount to machine it as it does to 3D print it. In fact, it might be easier to 3D print a lot of these things. And I think it's a sign it's coming, right? Like aluminum eventually will be 3D printed, steel will be 3D printed on a production level. It's coming. I'm hoping I'll be retired by then. But it's interesting to see everybody moving heavily into the 3D printed cans, but the FRTs, I was thinking about, we've got suppressors, changes, FRTs. I was thinking about, man, what shifts have there been in the market since I got in here? And I thought the three big ones are the arm brace literally created a whole new part of the firearms market, right? Mm-hmm. Like suddenly SBRs aren't a thing, and then they are, and then they aren't. But the whole
and now they're not rule, again.
Literally today, somebody sent me that article. I was like, son of a gun, because we actually did a bunch of we still do some OEM work for SB Tactical. I designed a bunch of their metal mounting brackets back in the day, or their pieces that the arm brace is attached to the guns with. And that was huge. Like that was a massive shift in the market. They literally, it's rare. You've got this square box that this is all the things, right? Oh, look, it's a Glock clone. It's a whatever. It's another new AR. And then somebody just carves out with a line. Oh, look, it's a rectangle now. And there's this whole segment of new things that can be done. And then, we're seeing that with the suppressor market, with the technology and just the NFA tax, making it more accessible, literally carved off a new piece of bigger market. And FRTs, which, man, that's one. Somebody asked me if we're getting into FRTs, and I said, well, they're going to be all good till the next administration, right? So,
yep.
But yeah,
and then And then it's going to end up being, legal challenges that get
Mhm.
tied up in the courts for years and years and years.
Yeah.
So, I,
Shades of
I,
Bumpstock, right?
I know, and it's,
We remember those.
oh man, the whole piece with FRTs is, I've got like two different sides of me that like argue back and forth internally about the goodness of an FRT. Is
Mhm.
it the bridge for us poorers that can't afford a class 3, post sample automatic firearm,
Mhm.
Eh, part of me is like, absolutely, yes, it is. And these should not be regulated at all because, you know, uh, obviously the Second Amendment was created for very specific reasons and has nothing to do about hunting and all those types of things. But then the other side of me is, but are they truly a bridge for that gap, or is it just a novelty? Because we've seen a lot of these FRTs, at least I have from various content creators that I know and talk to on a regular basis, that they're like, yeah, man, I got 300 rounds through mine and it broke, you know? And I think we'll get to a point where the FRT will be as reliable as, a standard full auto lower for an AR-15, that is, anyway. But we're not there yet, and we need to get there very quickly. Otherwise, it's going to get squashed.
Mhm.
And additionally, you've got all the infighting within the FRT community as well, within the manufacturers. You're right. So you've got, I'm not going to air my opinions about it, but you've got obviously Rare Breed, who has been tasked with sending out cease and desist letters, and
Mhm.
they have to quote unquote defend their patents. Okay, that's fine, but then if you're not even looking at Rare Breed, you look over at the like FRTs for AK community, right? You've
Yeah.
got like 3 different companies, and at one point in time, those 3 different companies were technically one company.
And the
Just
guys, did they all split up? And
well, yeah, there was like, it was like this whole drama of like allegedly people not getting paid, and people who pre-ordered things didn't get their products, and money being embezzled, and so on and so forth. Then all of a sudden this guy goes over here and creates his own, and this guy goes over here and creates his own, and the guy who was doing all the machining for the products to begin with has his own, so it's like,
you know what that is, and I think I can sum up what's going on there, at least in that instance. There's money to be made. That reminds me a lot of what is it, like the Ingram Mac 10, right? Where it ended up getting split up among people, and then a guy'd go out of business and somebody else would buy it. Two guys would get in an argument, split off, and then you have like 15 companies all making Mac SMGs or
yeah,
pistols, whatever it is. And it simply comes down to somebody thinks I can do it better, and the guy who's running this doesn't know what he's doing, or he didn't cut my paycheck on time, or he forgot to pick up the sandwich and get pickles and mayo on it for me. Like, who knows what level it is, or it's just, I'm sure there is a whole spectrum in there of slimy, dishonest,
oh yeah.
and not, and ethical and whatever. I'm sure a whole book could be written on it.
Well,
Boy,
it's funny you bring it, you say all of that, because I had I came across a reel on Instagram of another content creator that I know, and he's like, hey, I got these 3 different AKFRTs. I wonder which one's the best. But before I figure out which one's the best, I hear there's a lot of rumbling about, which one's the best, and so on and so forth. Can someone clue me in as to what's going on with all the hoopla about this? And I was like, hey, you just need to send me a DM, So he did. He sent me a DM. He's like, okay, you got me. What's up? And so I sent him a voice memo explaining in about 3 minutes, as fast as I possibly could. Okay, here's how it all broke down from my perspective of the things that I know. And this guy did this, and this guy wasn't paying this guy, so he broke off and did this. And then the guy who was tasked to machine all of these different parts, he wasn't getting paid, so he started his own. And so he replied back, he's like, holy crap, I had no idea. And I'm like, I know. And I don't even have 100% of the story.
And you're just getting the keyhole view of it, right? Like my wife always jokes, and it doesn't seem like there's been as much of it in the last few years, or maybe we just haven't been tuned into, but she said, man, there is more drama in the gun industry than there is in a high school girls' locker room. She's like, I've never seen any industry like this. Well, every industry's got its whatever. The forced reset trigger, boy, you could do a whole series on this. I just want to say, first off, it's Hoffman, right? He was the one who came up with the concept and patented it and then made it like free use. He just said, nope, anybody can use this concept.
So that's where it gets a little murky.
Weird too.
Yeah, it gets a little murky there, because I don't know if he actually patented anything. I think what he ended up doing was pulling from the 223 patent.
Yeah, there was some existing expired patents, right?
Correct.
And he just figured out whether it was tweaking it and it was still within the bounds of it, but it was basically, it became public domain because the patents expired. I will say, however, the fact he basically was like, not anybody can use this. And talk about Second Amendment, bro, right? Like,
yeah.
Like, it's so rare to see somebody do that because they feel it's for the betterment of everybody else. And then all the drama happens because everybody's like, well, I can make $1 on this. I think my opinion on Rare Breed is they probably had to make a deal with the devil, with the ATF on, well, we're not going to shut you down. And this is just, let me state, this is my personal guess, my take on it. I don't know anything about that. But the fact that they got into the thing with the ATF, and then the ATF says, well, you have to enforce your patent. My personal cynical view is the ATF said, we'll let you not get in trouble if you enforce this patent and go after everybody else, because then you're basically doing our dirty work. And then, because we can't get around the law, which says it's one, every one pull of the trigger. So that's my take. I don't know, probably get an ATF inspection next week for saying that.
Well, I think that you're a little closer to the mark, at least from my perspective. And to caveat to that is Rare Breed then becomes a de facto registry for the ATF. So once the ATF or the next administration says, nope, we're putting a kibosh on it, they just go straight to Rare Breed and say, we need your lists of everybody that purchased one.
There are unwinnable situations in life, I'll say that. Now, what actually happened, who knows? But if that's the situation, that would not be a fun position to be in, right?
Right.
As far as the mechanical aspect of it, so we have our FFL, we have our SOT, so I can make post samples. And I've looked at how FRTs work, and I actually debated setting up some guns as FRTs to test them. And actually, I like the push button system for one of the builds we were doing. I was like, oh, that would work really well. But it actually, Ian on Forgotten Weapons, he did a Q&A the other day, and he made a statement that had not occurred to me. Somebody asked him, would you take an FRT or an actual, like an actual machine gun? And he said, well, the FRT is literally, the word force is in the name. It is forcing the gun to do something it was not intended to. And that's why you see breakage, right? It's basically it's not quite slam fire, but it's using friction to hold the trigger back and do or the hammer back and do a bunch of things. And that's why they break. You're also trying to shoehorn a system in many times. I know a guy who has an MP5 one, and the linkage breaks routinely or jams up or whatever. We're trying to shoehorn stuff into a gun that was never meant to be there. Now, I will say, as far as creativity and creative solutions and design work, man, FRTs are fascinating. Like, to even have the mental model of how to make that work, and then to adapt it to guns that don't have, like, the AR-15 bolt carrier. They have no tail on them, like an MP5 or an AK or all these things. It blows my mind. I look at it and I kind of get the concept of what they're doing, but at the same time, the actual mechanics, I'm like, nah, I'll leave it to somebody else. But yeah, I think the price point's low enough on them. People are willing to accept that they break occasionally. That's what I've seen.
Yeah,
I know a guy who was in the military who also made a comment that I thought was appropriate about forced reset. Nobody's shooting full auto to hit a bunch of stuff. You shoot full auto to keep everybody's heads down while all the riflemen maneuver to shoot a bunch of stuff. So,
correct.
But hey, forbidden fruit. Like, people want to experience what it's like to have I guess we'll say, a rapid fire weapon. I get it. I was there too, right? I've done that too. Now I've taken risked my whole career on a path that involves, I have the ability to do that, but I absolutely understand that.
Yeah.
And we could get down the rabbit hole of should the general public have things that do that? I don't know.
I mean,
innocent until proven guilty, right? Like,
yeah.
I mean, it's hard to say that when somebody gets hurt from it, but in general.
Sure. Well, one of the things, going back to Ian's comments, I've seen some snippets. I didn't watch the Q&A, and I like Ian. I respect who he is and what he's done for the community, and truly look up to him for his remarkable firearms knowledge.
Yep.
From a historical standpoint. I have a bachelor's degree in history, so that stuff really kind of I geek out on that type of stuff. However, it's almost like to me, his comments seemed to be a little bit more of like a full auto snobbery, I guess.
I can see that, yeah.
Because, and the reason why I say that is because he's like, oh, well, these things break, and it's forcing something to do that it's forcing a firearm to do something it wasn't made to do, and so on and so forth. But machine guns didn't just manifest themselves, right? How many different machine guns did we see at the turn of the century in World War One, especially in World War One, that just did not work, regardless if they were magazine fed, kind of IAR style, the precursor to the IAR or the auto rifle, things like the BAR, the BAR, people think, oh, that was just like the pinnacle of a rifleman's automatic, auto rifle. Yet it was heavy. It only had a small magazine to run it. It didn't work all the time, especially if it got dirty, so we've had all of these growing pains for decades before full auto became pretty much reliable, from a mechanical standpoint. Obviously we're going to have run into, I was going to say, obviously we're going to have certain problems, and I think that's where we are with the FRT world. Is it's not even an infant. It hasn't really even been born. I think maybe
years, right?
That's all it's been. Yeah. It's like it's just been born. And so it's going through its growing pains, it's teething, it's doing all of these things. So yeah, naturally it's not going to work well.
Innovation stage. It's not at the final stage, the 1911, right? I love this as an example. Everybody thinks the 1911 is the perfect handgun, like it was the best design, and it probably was at that point, right? You can make a strong argument for it. But there were 6 evolutions of it before it got to its form that we know. It started the 1900 sight safety, then the 1902 military. We go through all of them, and they were all learning lessons because nobody had tread that ground before. And I think actually you are extremely on point with the fact that we are in the innovation stage where we're learning things. And I think intentionally or unintentionally, I think I already commented on it. We're trying to shoehorn forced reset triggers into existing systems, which isn't really fair to the forced reset trigger design, right? Like
Sure.
if you were to blank slate it and design a gun based around that system, I'm sure you could, first off, you could strengthen the elements. The flip lever? That's the part that usually breaks.
Right.
It's because it has to be so thin to fit where it wasn't ever meant to go. Somebody found an envelope in there that it can fit and do all the things it's got to do. Well, if you know that it breaks, if you're designing a gun from scratch, you just design it so you can put the material strength and thickness in there to make it work. Like, you're right. There's it's so rare these days to see something which is truly mechanically innovative in how something's being done. I don't think I saw it. It's right here in our face, right? Like it's and sometimes it's not obvious when you're standing right in front of it. It could be in 10 or 15 years. It wouldn't be funny if it started to be viewed as a legitimate form of repetitive fire actuation. Like in the community in general, you're going to see HK in 20 years is using FRT technology in some design.
Oh yeah.
That'd be a riot.
Yeah. I mean, and it even goes into different aspects or different realms of the industry itself. Is, you go back 8 years or so, and if you put a pistol brace on your AR-15, people would laugh at you. It's like, what are you, poor? You can't afford a tax stamp? Just buy the $200. Now you put a pistol brace on something, no one even blinks at it. They're like, right. Oh, okay, I see. All right, I see what you're doing.
It's like most militaries didn't want to adopt a semi-automatic rifle because they didn't think they could trust the infantryman to not expend all his ammunition. And then now it's like, can you, and now these days people like, oh man, I can't believe people actually carried around bolt action rifles and fought in a war. Like it's the mindset, it's the cultural, what do you say? The cultural zeitgeist, I guess, shifts over time. And the first adopters often get made fun of. And the AR-15, great example, right? They used new materials, new technologies, and nobody trusted it.
Yep.
Because it was always steel and walnut. It had worked for 100 years, so they knew it and trusted it. So
yeah. And it's funny you bring that up too about semi-automatic rifles, because the Army specifically went to a 3-round burst in the M16A2 because they thought, based off of the lessons learned in Vietnam, that soldiers are just burning through all of their ammunition. And in some cases, they were, because they had no idea who they were shooting at or where the fire was coming from because of the terrain that they had to operate in. So it was, in a lot of cases, just a spray and pray. Well, then the Army comes in, they're like, nope, we're getting rid of full auto. We're going to do a 3-round burst, which ends up being, it wasn't the best design. It functioned, but it didn't necessarily function correctly always, and then full circle, we come back to full auto with the M4A1, so it's just interesting how the history of the firearms industry is a flat circle, 1911s are perfect examples. 1911s were the best thing in God's creation when they first came out, won 2 world wars, 263 grains of pain. You shoot them once and they blow up in a fiery sparks, and then all of it then it turned into, oh, that's just a boomer gun. I can't believe you're carrying a 1911, that'll get you killed in the streets. And then it turned into the 2011, and people are like, oh, this is the new hotness. It's like, it's weird.
It reminds me of, I always see that, I don't know if you call that a fashion show, but a fad, right? Like, or what's acceptable. I mean, at the end of the day, if you've can put a bullet down range, you're probably doing pretty good, right? Like whatever mechanism it is, it gives you a huge advantage over not being able to do that, whether it's bolt action or 1911 or a high capacity, 17 round Glock 17 with a red dot. it reminds me a bit of the what's old is new statement, where the British, what was it? The British were using khaki colored clothing in World War I. And then, then green became the color. And then woodland camo became the thing. And then, no, woodland camo is not cool. You know what we should do? We should go to coyote brown, which is khaki. And then they're like, oh man, these solid colors don't work. You know what we should do? We should go to camo, like multicam, which is just light woodland, basically, or desert woodland. It's just what's old is new. It's, you see the advantages of something and then poo-poo the previous thing, but then somebody rediscovers it, and there's something in the human psyche that does that, I suspect.
Yeah.
And I know wars, right?
Oh, yeah, exactly. And then that then just devolves into another rabbit hole for me as a consumer. Is now I'm starting to like fall back into the retro guns, and picking up carry handle AR-15s like they're I don't know, crack or something. I ended up picking up a police trade-in for a Bushmaster from probably late 90s, maybe early 2000s, but definitely during post-ban era. And it was just like the coolest thing ever. The more I looked at it, the more small little details from that bygone era were starting to manifest itself, because you look at it and you're like, oh, it's a carry handle. Then you look at it again and you're like, wait a second, that's an A1 carry handle, but it has a brass deflector. Holy cow, that's like a C7, C8 upper with a 16-inch barrel, but that's not a government profile barrel. That's an H-bar barrel. It is like all these different things just like were snowballing on top of themselves. And I'm like, holy cow. So then naturally I had to go out and buy a Colt 733 clone, so you've got the 10.5-inch.
Every AR owner needs a Colt 733. That's just the way it is. I've got one. I got a clone. I built one up. It's funny because somebody said, when I showed some select people the Ripley Rail when we first had developed it, as prototyping, and one of the guys looked at it and he said, dude, I think you're going to set a trend to making iron sights cool again. And my wife joked, she said, we should make a red hat with gold letters on it that says, what was it? MISGA for Make Iron Sights Great Again. So,
yeah. Well, and that's the interesting thing is that again, my buddy Clayco 47, he does Kalash Bash, which is AK focused competition, which is really really cool. But they also developed another competition called Lethal Weapons, and Lethal Weapons is a competition specifically for like pre-ban firearms.
Oh, like all the cool 80s stuff, like the Daewoo and the oh man,
absolutely.
So I gotta find out. You give me the info after the show.
Oh, absolutely. I'll give you all the info. The it's Kalash is a bit of a festival on top of a competition, whereas Lethal Weapons is just a competition. That you compete. Once you're done competing, they do the awards, and that's it. They reset for the next day, and they do it for 3 days straight.
That's awesome.
But they do it not only for a rifle, but they have a subgun match, which is going to be your MP5s or your Mac 10s or whatever. And then they also opened up a new category this year, which is sniper. Their sniper competition is going to be full power rifles that are probably like bolt guns or something that's going to be prior to obviously 1994.
Just make sure he allows SVDs, because somebody's going to bring one. So
I'm sure. Well, I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, I wonder if I could get in touch with Zastava and see if I can get like one of their M91s.
Yeah. Was the Black Arrow? Was it what caliber is that in? I forget.
That one's, I think it's still in 7.62 by 54R.
Okay.
But it's basically the Yugo's version of the Dragunov, or the Romanian. I guess it's the Romanian SVD. Is that right?
Yeah, PSL, is that
PSL, yeah. So, but anyway, but Clay's like, he's trying to bully me, and he's like, "What's the matter, Mark? You afraid to shoot a bolt gun with irons?" And I'm like, here you go with irons again. I'm already going to compete with iron sights in the rifle competition. I'm going to use my 733, but man, I don't know if I could do it for long range. Iron sights long range, that's not my thing.
Yeah. I've been shooting out to 300 or 400 yards. Anything beyond that, and I honestly, anybody with irons at beyond 300 to 400 yards, I'm impressed. It sounds doable, but at least for me, I start to break down after that range. So,
I've watched in years past at Kalashnikon, they usually have a stage that it is their long range stage, and it's, I don't know what it was like prior to me starting, but minimum it was like 575 yards, out to 600 yards in some cases. And I've watched like Clay and Mario from SOF Defense. I've watched those guys hit 600 yards with irons with an AK.
Do you think that's? I mean, obviously that's being a very good shooter, right? Like a very proficient shooter.
Oh yeah.
Do you think a good portion of that is just knowing your gun very, very well? Like you've used that gun enough, you understand.
Absolutely.
Just how it performs particularly. I guess you answered already.
Yeah. No. You're absolutely right.
Like every gun seems to, and I don't know if you've experienced this, but I've got a couple of ARs. They all seem to have a bit of a personality to them, the way they shoot. I don't know how else to put it. But I guess if you trained with the same gun or practiced with the same gun a lot, you'd start to get just the instinctive feel of, okay, at that range, I got to aim here with the wind. This is what it likes. So.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And even for me, in those competitions, I was using an optic. The second year I did it, I used with just a red dot, but that red dot had a dot circle, and I knew that the bottom of the circle was, X number of MOA for a holdover. So I knew, okay, if I use that as an aiming point, I'm good out to 550 yards or something like that. And then you just kind of tweak it ever so slightly from there. And next thing you know, first round impact at 575 yards with a red dot. I'm just like, I turned around when they said impact. I turned around and looked at everybody. I was like, what just happened?
Okay.
Yeah. I totally meant to do that.
The one thing that threw me off, because I've been able to shoot out to about 700 yards. That's the farthest I typically have access to. And I have shot some bolt guns out, with scopes at that range. But the thing that throws me that I feel like the movies don't capture, or you can tell when people have not shot at that range, is when you shoot, and if you know what you're looking for, you can see the plate wiggle a little or whatever. But it's how long it takes for the sound to get back to you. Like somebody goes hit, and you're like, really? Dong.
Yep. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why I do kind of like to challenge myself a little bit when I go to the range I do most of my filming at. I have access to 450 yards. And when I get into some of the heavier weight bullets for 5.56 or even heavier calibers, that's when it really starts to become fun, because you shoot, you have obviously the report of your rifle, and then you'll eventually have that dong on the steel plate, and the I don't know, the euphoria of hearing that dong, when you feel like it's like that. It's like, I don't know if you ever played basketball or picked up games or anything like that. You're shooting a 3-pointer and you're like, yeah, I think that's good, and then it goes in. You're like, oh yeah.
Oh yeah, it's the I think oh yeah.
Yep. So yeah, it's just, that's one of the reasons why I do enjoy shooting out at further distances. But and it also, it pushes you, as you alluded to understand your rifle better than the next guy, because if you're going to be able to compete with them, you've got to be, you're going to have to understand how your rifle is going to perform at certain ranges.
Yeah, yeah. And it's funny. I never get to shoot as much as I like to. And I actually used to do a lot more training. These days I don't really do, training of any sort. And it just, to get out to the range with we've got a great range we get to shoot out at here, a private range here in South Carolina that, like I said, it's got 700 yard for rifle with steel plates every 100 yards and a good pistol bay, and then a third bay. And we're very blessed that we get to use it, but it's a bit of a distance from where we're at. So it's one of those, we might be testing something in the shop in a shoot snail or something like that, but I do not get to shoot as much as I would like to. And I don't know if my skills degraded or maybe they just never got beyond a certain point. I'm not able to push myself the way I'd like to really see what I'm capable of, but that's okay. I can hit something still. So.
Yeah. And it's one of those things too, is I also have access to a range out to 1,000 meters, which I think rough math is about 1,100 yards. But in order for me to access that range, there are several different hurdles that I have to jump through, not to mention it's at least 45 minutes to an hour transit time, because there's certain areas that you have to go through, and then you have to get, you have to stop and show your ID and be able to access a different area and everything else. So
it's
sometimes
the whole day range trip, isn't it? That's
it is.
Yeah. And I'm sure you're busy like every human being, right? You're busy and you got to say, do I really have the time to go do this every week? And 1/7 of my waking hours is shooting guns. I mean, it'd be great, but there's a reality to it that you can put in X amount of time. So
yeah, for sure. And so you've really got to be committed that day. Yes,
absolutely.
And it's one of those things. Like this weekend, I will be taking a mutual friend of myself and my girlfriend to the range because she is a individual who is kind of a prominent figure in the community and has apparently ended up with a bit of a, I don't want to say a stalker necessarily, but someone who has shown a little bit more interest than what she's comfortable with. And she's just like, hey, would you mind taking me out and, taking me to the range again and walking me through my pistol that I've got? And I was like, oh, absolutely. Yeah, let's figure it out. And I said, just throw it out there. I know which pistol you got. And it's a great pistol. It's a, let's see if I remember correctly. It's a Walther P99 SK, I think. So it's a compact pistol. And I said, hey, if this is not something that you're concerned about carrying on a regular basis, if this is going to be kind of a quote unquote nightstand gun, it's not necessarily that this is a bad pistol, but might be a little bit too flippy for you. It might have a little bit more recoil than you might like. I could bring out several of my pistols and let you shoot my pistols and see how you like those. And she was like, yep, bring them all. Let's try them all. I want to see, I might, I don't know, I might upgrade. So
that's great.
Yeah. But
I also on both points that you've got a selection, and then that she was open to the idea of, hey, maybe there's something better here, right? It's not just well, just give me something and I'll just run with it. Yeah, that's great when somebody's open-minded about that and also recognizes that being better, like it might give you an edge, right? Like that's why there are so many different pistols and people choose one over the other, is finding the one that works for you, that lets you kind of have a hack on where you are on the curve of being proficient. So
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. So, but those are, again, kind of getting back to the point. That's going to be pretty much an all afternoon type of thing, and when I go to the range, it is specifically for filming content. Not only am I filming content, I may be also working on some drills, or, working on some skills, or, testing dope for a rifle I may be getting ready to use in competition. And I was talking to my girlfriend about it, and she's like, well, don't forget, hey, we're going to go to the range with our friend. And so if you need to film some stuff, you don't have to cram everything into one day. You can do it on that day too. And I'm like, nope, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. I'm going to concentrate on exactly what we're there for, because it's not fair to our friend. It's not fair to you, because I know that you're going to want to shoot too. So, those are those range days that we all have to, yes, I'm talking about you, to, just focus on one specific thing. We need those days,
Yeah. And that's kind of what happens for us too, is it's work, right? Like 90% of the time I'm at the range, we're testing something, we're fixing something. There was recently, I was at the range with the owner of the range, and we agreed to help with a charity event there where people got to shoot, different guns and whatever. Well, you want to make sure the guns work, that they're zeroed, that everything's functioning properly. And it was like a whole day just to do that, and whenever we end up going to his range to shoot for fun, it's always, oh, you know what? I got to fix the tractor that we mow the range with, or, or you know what? I got to get this red dot fixed for somebody or whatever, because he has his own business too. And yeah, it always creeps in, and very rare is it that you have the fun time. I actually was able to do that recently, go with another buddy of mine to a local indoor range, and we just shot for like an hour, and it was like, I forgot what this was like to just pull the trigger and not have to explain to people, hey, dude, like you're training somebody, when it always happens, right? And it's not bad, but it's when you're the experienced person there, you end up training, coaching, fixing guns, doing all those things because you're the one that knows how to do that, or everybody looks to you that you're the one that knows how to do it, even if you don't know whatever the thing is that needs to be done. You're the one to figure it out.
Right.
So yeah,
right.
It's very rare. You gotta pick and choose that, hey, this is my time, and my time is valuable to do the thing that I want to do. But I absolutely understand that.
Yeah. And the last indoor range session that I went to was very similar to that, but I got to shoot a VZ61 for the very first time.
Oh, nice. Full auto one, or semi, or?
No, it was just a semi, and
it
was on I can't remember what company makes the lower, but it's a 3D printed lower.
Oh, Titus Arms, maybe?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I saw that.
Yep.
I'm familiar with their stuff because we're very much into AUGs, and people ask us about NILOG stuff. So I started looking into that and just getting a feel for what it is. So, yeah.
And I was actually pleasantly surprised on a couple of different things. Number one, this was still set up in a pistol format, so it didn't have the fold over stock. But shooting it was an absolute blast. I've never shot a 32 ACP before, and that thing is just fun. That's a fun caliber to shoot.
They don't have much recoil, but they still feel more substantial than a 22. It's this beautiful middle ground. It's actually, I'd say, a great cartridge for somebody when you're trying to step them up a little bit, but you don't want to overwhelm somebody who's recoil sensitive. So VZ61s are awesome guns. They're kind of this weird niche thing, what their use was for, but I don't know, they strike a spot.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to put it.
Well, and then additionally, you wouldn't expect the trigger, at least the trigger in this particular example that I was shooting, it was way better than anything I ever expected. It was better than a Glock trigger, and I was not expecting that. So naturally, at the same time that here I am shooting this VC61, all of my buddies that do content creation, so my buddies like Kyle from Gear Know How and Greg's Gruns and Clayco 47, Gun Quality Enforcement, all of these buddies of mine are going out and buying VC61 kits. And they're like, I was like, come on, guys, man, and turns out freaking KVAR, aka Arsenal, they've got kits for like $2.99, and I'm like,
oh geez, that's another, I guess, the fourth segment of the market that's expanded is this weird 3D printing one, and it's wonderful to see the innovation. Some years ago, I was actually looking to see if I could adapt an AR-15 barrel to make an aluminum receiver for an AUG that would just take a fixed AR barrel. Because I was thinking, hey, this would simplify it, lighten it. You can get kits, and semi-auto stuff. But it was more just a design exercise, I guess you could say. I was like, it kind of works. The bolts are very close, but I just didn't end up doing anything with it. And then I saw the Nylog and how it goes together. I was like, son of a gun, somebody took my idea. But props to whoever came up with it for going, hey, we can do this and tweak this and tweak this. That's the John Browning innovation we're seeing in the industry, and the FRT stuff, right? Like the suppressor market, we referenced earlier. That's basically the same people copying each other's homework. But there's some really interesting stuff going on with, like, hey, it's only a 32 ACP. The polymer filament can withstand the recoil no problem. Let's just 3D print a lower. And there's that part of me that works with materials that gets really uncomfortable with that. And then there's the other part of me that sees it and goes, wow, I would never have taken that chance, but it works. So very cool.
Yeah, for sure. And that was one of the things that my buddy who bought that lower from Titus was saying. He saw the AUG kits come up for sale, and he's like, I've got it set on my calendar and I'm going to purchase them as soon as they come up. He saw the calendar reminder, but he was out doing something. He's like, I'll jump on it just as soon as I get home. And like 2 hours later, he gets home. They're all sold out. And he was so mad.
It is so weird. That's the other strange thing, is how that market suddenly, like an AUG kit is very useless in general. None of the parts really were moved back and forth between a semi-auto AUG. We could go down a rabbit hole on that, but they specifically designed everything to be very hard to use in you can't convert a semi-auto easily. It's essentially two different guns that look very similar and have a few interchangeable components. But yeah, those kits sat forever. They were available, and then that Nylog came out, boom, gone. just appeared, and now you're seeing, I guess the VC61 kits are still available to some degree, but I guarantee they'll run out someday. They'll disappear. So
yeah. And I've in the many competitions that I've been out and shot, one of them, a guy showed up with an AUG, and I think it was, I gotta dig back into my memory banks, but I think it was a pre-banned AUG. So like one from
like the old A1 with the integral carry handle sight, or the other integral optic.
Nice. The donut of death, and I was remarkably impressed at how well he shot that AUG, because I had never considered an AUG to be something that was very, I don't want to say necessarily refined, but something that I would look at and be like, oh yeah, those are actually fairly easy to run, and manual arms are easy, and they're fairly accurate at longer ranges. And here, this guy just crushed all of my preconceived notions of it. It was really cool to see.
I used to run, well, it was a Microtech, an MSAR, which is, the clones that came out of the AUGs before the AUGs were available again. But I was running my Microtech back in the day in matches. And so we'd shoot matches at one of the ranges back in Illinois, and there'd be like 40 slots in a match. So we'd have 37 ARs, one dude with an AK, one dude with the M14, and me with my AUG clone. And everybody was confused. They're like, how can you shoot that so well? To the guy with the M14, the guy with the AK, the three of us all did pretty well usually. And a lot of the people shooting the ARs were just, what's the phrase, soup sandwich? They thought. And the truth was, before I ever went to a single, a single match, I went to the range and I just practiced mag reloads over and over and over again, because I knew that was the one thing that I had to make sure I knew it, because you can't quite see the mag as easily as an AR to make sure you're doing everything. But just practice shooting offhand, with left-sided or whatever, as opposed to being right-handed, getting used to with a brass and where not to get hit in the face. It's just manual of arms. And I think we live in such an AR-centric culture because, I don't know what percentage of people have been in the military, but everybody who's been in the military in the last 40 years is shot an AR, right? You've learned, that's what you've learned. And especially you see it now, all the guys who get out and go get their AR, a police officer or whatever, that it's hard to, and I think it's hard for some people to envision that another gun can run just as well. Like if the U.S. Army had adopted the AUG, we'd all know how to use AUGs and we'd think ARs were weird, but it's just perspective. So I guess
isn't it really kind of interesting how perspective would have changed? That brings up a very interesting, thought experiment as to what life would be like if a bullpup was adopted instead of a standard rifle. Even going into some of the experimental rifles that we started looking at in the late 90s and early 2000s, like the XM8 or the IOCW, some of those really interesting concepts, or even the G36, so it would have been fun to see how that timeline would have played out.
Yeah, you always wonder, because it's always one decision different away from a completely different timeline. What if what was it? I forget who it was that made the decision that they would stick with 30-06 with the Garand instead of going to 276, which is like the intermediate cartridge we've been chasing for 100 years now.
Yeah, right.
If we could have ended up with it in 1926 or 1932 or something like that, if we but for very practical reasons, stuck with 30-06 because there was a gazillion rounds of it laying around and the government was broke and so was everybody else. But yeah, these decisions of, if we had just taken this path or whatever, like what if the G11 had actually been adopted by the U.S. military? Like West Germany actually adopted small amounts of them, and then the wall fell, and we would have been like, okay, somebody did caseless ammo. Well, now we're all chasing that horse of everybody's trying to do their own caseless rifle, and it wouldn't even be because caseless is the best solution. It's because, well, it's the highest tech, right? Like to show that you're a first world nation with the most modern arm. So
yeah, it's that brings up another point. There's a whole bunch of rabbit holes. Just real quick, when I first joined the Army, I was on tanks. I was an M1 tanker, and the M1A1, M1A2, M1A2 SEP, all of them use a caseless round. So when you pull it out of the ready rack and put it into the breech, fire the main gun, the only thing that comes out is a aft cap, which is the base of the round with a stem in the center of it for the primer to ignite not only the propellant, but also the case itself.
That is crazy. Like to to think that something that big just disappears down the bore when you pull the trigger,
Yeah.
and it's just essentially the rim of a cartridge that comes back out of it. So,
And it always surprised me because obviously we're not shooting high volume of rounds through, combat or even in training when we're doing our tank qualification tables. You're talking in a year, you're probably talking maybe 100 rounds. In some cases, 100 rounds over the course of a couple of days,
right,
through a 120 millimeter cannon. But even still, it didn't seem, at least in my recollection, it didn't seem as if that caseless propellant or the caseless, construction and propellant was fouling up the breech or the gun tube very much at all. So
right. And that, I mean, I wonder how much of that is just the physics of the bore is so large, and you've got the primer, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's an electrical primer system with a manual back. Like, there's a lot of safety systems to make sure that casing fires and gets rid of it. Whereas, because it's really, really bad if you have a questionable 120 millimeter round, right? It's got or 105, whatever it is. It has to get ejected out, and the poor loader now has got a lot round that hopefully is not a hang fire sitting in his arms. Whereas with a rifle, you just pull the ejection handle if it's a bad round, and the whole point is to get everything out of the way of the action so that you move on. I mean, I guess if we were, the size of giants and could carry around 105 millimeter guns, it'd probably just be a big brass case, and you just pull it out manually. But and that, that's it. I know, because with the G11, I think that was part of the problem, was occasionally if the primer or whatever it was, whatever stub, which is essentially the same way it worked, wouldn't always come out, or if you had a bad round, it created a whole complicated system of, well, how do you get rid of it if there's nothing to hang on to? So, but I don't know. That's a really interesting design and philosophical question of why is it done that way. But like you said, the fire volumes are probably closer to shooting a magazine or two through an AR, or even treating it a little more like a bolt action rifle, right? Where you're loading a single shot. Sure, it's got a semi-automatic action to do some of the operation for you, but yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I'm going to ponder that one.
Yeah, because I mean,
laying in bed.
Yeah, it then makes you wonder, how could we, not how, but could we adapt that into something in a smaller, higher volume rate, and still have it run, quote unquote, clean, that it wouldn't cause issues in feeding or jamming up something in a chamber because of that propellant being, or that casing being dissolved. So,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I suppose that there would probably be some redesigns of primers to kind of help expel that through the burning process, to kind of force that stuff down the barrel.
Right. I mean, honestly, this could be the electric vehicle versus the gasoline vehicle argument of, electric vehicles aren't as efficient. Well, that's because gasoline vehicles had 100-year of head start of development on them, right? Like, maybe it's just Maxim decided, hey, brass case, or brass case ammunition was adapted because it worked in that certain application, and just nobody really was forced to try and see if they could find a better solution, and maybe there is a theoretical dividing point in history where if somebody else had come up with that concept and it worked, it'd be like, oh wow, this solves a lot of problems. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of reasons that could be. So, but that is a fascinating tangent on
absolutely
how ammunition works, and the whole development of, like, one little change could absolutely change the entire lineage of firearms. So.
Yeah, and with that, I think that's a great place to kind of conclude this podcast too, because we're pushing almost 2 hours at this point. So,
Sounds good.
yeah, Sven, it's been great to talk to you and kind of reconnect with you again. Naturally, at the end of our podcast, we just kind of give you an opportunity to not only tell everybody again who you are and what you do and where we can find you, but also give you the last few moments to just kind of bestow some folksy wisdom if you have any to share.
So I'm Sven at Manticore Arms, as we started the podcast with. The Ripley Rail is our new product. It's a sci-fi inspired forend for the AR-15. We are working on more models of forend and other things that will expand out. We're hoping to have a whole product line for this. If you want to find the Ripley Rail or anything else we're working on, you can go to manticorearms.com. We're also on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. So if you search for Manticore Arms or Ripley Rail, especially on social media, we will turn up. And I don't have any folksy wisdom other than it is fun to be on a podcast. I haven't done this in a while, and I really enjoyed it. So
yeah, absolutely. I will have all of the details for you, not only the website, but also your Instagram and Facebook and all that type of stuff down in the description. So if you guys are interested in finding Sven and all the new goodness that he's got coming, you know where to find him. And my last little thing is, again, Jefe hasn't been able to join us on the podcast. He's out doing some really cool things with his day job. And I just encourage you guys, if you have a friend that's out there who is, maybe out and about doing things, make sure you check in with them from time to time. Just let them know that let them know that you're still thinking of them and that obviously you miss them. And actually, I miss Jefe. I hope he's back soon so we can get him. He's a bit more of a comic relief for the podcast more so than I am. But with that being said, again, appreciate each and every single one of y'all for hanging with us. If you've made it this far in the podcast, that's awesome. You are awesome. Appreciate it. Don't forget to check out XS Sites. They are our title sponsor for the podcast. Use code LARP for 20% off anything from their store, just as a thank you for listening to the podcast. But we will catch you guys next time. We will be back on schedule. This last month kind of got away from me as far as scheduling goes because of Kalash Bash and traveling and everything else. We'll be back on schedule with another awesome guest here in just a couple of weeks on the 15th. We'll catch you guys then. As always, don't forget to live, laugh, and LARP. Bye, y'all.